Good morning, everyone. My name is Aisha Spradley, Professional Learning and Instruction Coordinator for PSAYDN. It's my pleasure to be your moderator for this session. On behalf of PSAYDN, I'd like to welcome you to the first in our Faith in STEM, Bridging Purpose and Potential two-part series. Today's webinar is entitled Faith, Creativity, and STEM, Igniting the Spark. We are excited to welcome back today's presenter, Dr. Natalie King. Dr. King is an associate professor of science education at Georgia State University. Through her research programs, initiatives, and grant projects, Dr. King works to promote equity in science teaching and learning, advance the diversification of STEM teaching workforce, elevate the identities and brilliance of Black girls in STEM, foster the development of community-based, faith-based STEM programs. Dr. King is also the founder and executive director of I Am STEM LLC, where she collaborates with community-based organizations to provide culturally affirming summer enrichment programs for Black and Brown children, preparing them to be productive and critically conscious citizens. All right, to ground our work today, we have an icebreaker question. I'd like for you to take a few moments to name something in science that fills you with amazement and strengthens your faith at the same time. Feel free to share your response in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and share that way as well. The changing of the seasons. Can you elaborate a little bit, Cynthia?
So yeah, I think just amazed by God when I see the changes from, winter to spring, spring to summer, summer to fall, and the fact that we can expect these things to happen. And so whether it's things that animals are doing or changes that we see in, just trees or, the senses. We have a preschool, so I'm very much into like, how does summer feel versus how does fall feel and things like that. And really attributing all of that to God's just, goodness.
Absolutely. Park said the bigness of the universe around us. Can you expand a little bit on that?
I just didn't realize how small I and my understanding are when I look at all that there is around me. It's been created.
Absolutely. And how intricate everything fits together and functions so well. Is there anyone else that would like to share? Sarah said watching things grow. Can you expand that a little bit more?
That gives us more time if we push it to August, September, October. That works for us.
I love going out into nature and just watching things bloom and grow. And it just really connects me to the earth and the beauty that God can give to our earth.
Absolutely, thank you. Sarah said the vast number of stars in space. Would you like to elaborate on that at all?
Other groups that were interested in that date, but like I said, nobody has said, oh my God.
Okay. Isis said childbirth. That's the one that resonates with me as well. Can you elaborate on that, Isis?
Yeah, just childbirth, of course, in general, people want to, generalize it. It's scientific and it's a natural process. But for some reason, every time I think of every time, the enemy enters my thought process is about lack, right? Lack in all areas, lack in your finances, lack in your relationships, and so forth. God always gives me the reminder of childbirth, that He's the creator of all things and how amazing, I only have one spiritual child, one biological child. I have, many spiritual children, but that one experience he always takes me back to, how amazing childbirth in general is. And then you look at your child and you think, this is God's creation from me. Like He used me as the vessel, and He reminds me how he continues to use me as a vessel, but just because I birthed the child, He allowed me to birth the child because He chose me. He chooses us, and He chooses to utilize us as vessels. And whenever that lack enters my mind, He reminds me, remember that process that I'm in control of. He is our ultimate creator, so He's in control of all things. Yeah, I could go on, but that's for me the
That was
childbirth.
beautiful. That was beautiful. Is there anyone else that would like to share? Thank you for ending that portion of for us, Isis, with such beautiful, rich thoughts. I love the wonder and the awe that you all shared in your responses, and it's clear that science can deepen our sense of purpose and connection if we allow it to. So thank you again for sharing. And I will hand it over to Dr. King.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that conversation. And so I appreciate you all for participating, and thank you for the warm introduction. It's a pleasure to be back. And for I think for some of you here, this was you weren't at the first session. I know the recording is made available, but it is just a pleasure to be in spaces where we can have these types of conversations, and you're talking about just natural things that happen every single day, that we can know that it's God's hands that's on it. And so it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Oopsies. I guess, so we're talking about faith and STEM. And so just a little bit about an overview. And some of you already touched on it just with the icebreaker, that God is the ultimate creator and we're made in his image. And so in this session, we'll be able to explore how creativity can be infused into curriculum design to spark curiosity and innovation in youth. We'll also just do a quick hands-on STEM activity with what you have there in your particular location, and then discuss how faith-based values, how we can embed that while equipping young minds with 21st century skills. So we've already kind of done a welcome and introduction. I would like to also learn who we have in the room too. And so I'm going to invite you to use the chat box to share that. We'll talk about creativity and curriculum, do a quick experiential learning activity, and then start thinking about what this might look like for our particular context, and just open it up for Q&A and discussion. All right, so if you don't mind, if you can share maybe the name of your organization, where you're located in Pennsylvania, as well as where you're originally from. And so we'll just give you just maybe about 60 seconds. Cynthia Wallace, Executive Director of the Oasis Project. Good. In Pittsburgh, we're originally from Flint, Michigan. Wonderful. ISIS, okay, 2 organizations. Wonderful. And joined from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Okay. Sarah, thank you so much. We have 2 Sarahs. Daycare, okay. Center for Schools and Communities. Wonderful. Connect Inc. in Southwestern Pennsylvania. Excellent. Central Assembly of God, fantastic. Okay, thank you all for sharing just a little bit about who you are and where you're joining from. I'm going to ask for one volunteer to read the scripture that's on the next slide. Sorry. Anyone to read out loud for us?
Happy to. Exodus 31 verses 2 and 3. See, I've called my name Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. And I have filled him with the Spirit of God in wisdom and in understanding and in knowledge and in all manner of workmanship.
Thank you so much. And so the context for this is in Exodus 31, God is giving the final instruction to Moses on Mount Sinai. And it's regarding the construction of the tabernacle and its furnishings. And so there's some sacred tasks, and that God emphasizes that they require not only for skill, but also for divine inspiration. So Bezalel was called by name, meaning this was a divine appointment and not just talent-based. He was filled with the Spirit of God, and God gave him wisdom, knowledge, understanding, and skill in craftsmanship. And so even as we think about this today, in such a time that we're living in, God has given us and endowed us with wisdom and understanding and knowledge, as well as craftsmanship or even skills that we have. And so how are we utilizing those skills? And so we are going to think through some of this, because it's important for us to connect faith with creativity for purposeful innovation. And it can be innovation in terms of our programs. It can be innovation in terms of curricular offerings, services that we offer within our organizations or within our churches. What does this look like for us to connect faith and creativity and be faithful creators, tracing back to God's creative blueprint? And so we want to start thinking about how we spark ideas and dialogue about creativity as a divine and biblical characteristic, and how it can inform STEM-based, faith-driven programming. So I always go back to this verse because I said if we are using the Bible as basically a manual for our lives, the first verse in the Bible talks about God being a creator. So in the beginning, God created, and then it goes on with what he's created and also that he had time for resting. And so if we're made in God's image, then creativity is a part of our spiritual DNA. And so we're going to just explore the many ways that creativity shows up in scripture, but also I want us to explore what are ways that we can be creative in the types of programming that we're offering within our schools, within our communities, with community-based organizations, as well as within our churches. Okay, so what I want you to do now is biblical creativity wall. And so what we're going to do is just try to brainstorm, where do we see creativity in the Bible? And so the icebreaker was perfect because it allowed us to think through ways that we see creativity every single day. But if you're thinking about Bible scriptures, where are some places where creativity is seen? Just let's brainstorm ideas. You can use the chat box. You can feel free to come off of mute.
I'll talk because I'm a slow typer. So I think starting with creation, I think is a basic, foundation, but then also how people's individual gifts are used. And so you think about how God used so many different people to just advance his kingdom. And so I'll just stop there.
Thank you so much. Anyone wants to add on to Cynthia's response?
I'm gonna come off mute. I'm still kind of forming my thoughts. This is Isis Chapman. So in my head, what I'm seeing is like all of the miracles. My husband always goes, when things happen, he always goes, well, we're not supposed to be surprised by God, but still, he never ceases to amaze me. Like all of the miracles that he comes up with, I feel like God is like the ultimate creativity expert, The first image that came to my mind was the animal in the bush. I think it was a ram, the ram in the bush. Like that was creative, like he waited until the very last minute, when the son was about to be sacrificed. And God has a sense of humor too. And he chose, the ram to be in the bush. There was no expectation there, but and even of course, the miracle that we always reference is Jesus turning water into wine. Like we don't see these things coming. Like our imagination, we're always taught that, God's work always highly goes way over our expectations or what we could even imagine. But still, every time it happens, it still amazes me. So yeah, his miracles are creative for me.
Thank you so much, Isis. Let's see if we can get one more. One more who's willing to come off mute or use the chat box.
Just the word pictures in Revelation alone, just trying to visualize them and realizing the creator of those images in words for us is a demonstration.
Thank you. And Best Park. All right, so I just made note of some of the things that you all shared. And so I also jotted down some examples before this session as well. And one is, of course, in Genesis 1, where God created the world. Thinking about Noah, that's in Genesis 6, where building the ark according to God's exact specifications. Thinking about Moses turning a staff into a snake and parting the sea. That's in Exodus 14. Bezalel and Aholiab, the artisans that filled with the spirit to build the tabernacle. That's in Exodus 31. Of course, David, he was a musician and poet, slingshot strategist. That's in First Samuel as well as in Psalms. We hear about his story. And then Jesus with the parables, healing with mud and spit, feeding 5,000 with one lunch, and the other miracles that was just mentioned. Thinking about Paul and him writing letters from prison and building church networks, and even some women in the Bible with Deborah's leadership, Esther's bold plan. Just so many different ways that the creative ways that people were used in the Bible, but also like as vessels, but also like things that they were able to accomplish just by faith, putting their faith to work. And so what I want to be able to do now is give us an opportunity just to try something out to do. And so I see some of you are in spaces. Hopefully none of you are driving at the moment. But we're going to do one passage and do a quick activity with that passage of scripture. And let's see if someone will be willing to read this one out to us.
I'll read it out loud.
Okay.
So we are looking at Acts 9:23-25. And after that, many days were fulfilled. The Jews took counsel to kill him, but their laying await was known of Saul, and they watched the gates day and night to kill him. Then the disciples took him by night down by the wall in a basket.
Wonderful. Okay, so this is not one of the stories that we hear all the time in terms of like maybe in our children's church or you know, Bible school, but this is the story of Paul, formerly Saul, and the basket. And so if we start thinking about like the early days of Paul, who was formerly Saul, and his ministry and his conversion to Christianity. So this passage really focuses on the danger that he faced, his escape from Damascus and his early efforts to preach the gospel. And so after Paul began preaching about Jesus as the Son of God, the Jewish leaders in Damascus plotted to kill him. And so they watched the city gates day and night in order to try to catch him. And so to save his life, Paul's disciples, they lowered him in a basket through an opening in the city wall, allowing him to escape under cover of darkness. So what I would like to do today is to see if you all have simple things. If you want 2 sheets of paper, any type of paper will do. 2 sheets of paper. You need a pair of scissors, that'll be fine too. And just one item that can represent Paul. 2 sheets of paper. And then if you need a pair of scissors to be able to cut things out, that'll be fine too. So we're going to spend about 10 minutes. And I'm going to give you all an opportunity to design your own basket drop. And so you can have an item that's going to reflect Paul, that's going to be in the middle. Whenever you create the basket, it can't be completely covered. And so it has to be open. But you can determine, we're going to be able to drop from like maybe 1 1 foot down, and you could always go a little bit higher, but just for today's activity, for the sake of the lesson activity, we're going to do it from about 1 foot. And the goal would be that you create a case. The top has to remain open. It's a basket that can safely make Paul land to the ground. So this is your mission. Paul must reach the ground safely to continue his ministry. How will you protect your Paul? Okay. So I want to see how many of you may have just 2 sheets of paper. If you have some paper close by, you can just grab it. Fantastic. I'm seeing some paper. And let me see. Sarah has a Paul. Let me see. Is that a bear? I love it. You never know what you have access to. That is fantastic. Does everyone else have their materials? So if you need a pair of scissors, you can use that. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to start our timer, and I'm going to give you just a few minutes to go ahead and build and design. And then I'll ask for a few of you if you're able to put your video on, and you can show us what the design of your basket, and then we'll just see if you are able to keep Paul safe. Okay, who wants to share? Who would like to share? All right, I'm going to spotlight Sarah.
All right. Here's my gram bear.
I love it. Can you share how you came up with the design?
Sure. So I was thinking I need rope of some sort to lower, and I thought folding would be a sturdy way to create the basket. So I started cutting little flaps and trying to fold it. This was my second design. And then I used thin strips to tie on and created a rope.
That is amazing. And so are you going to lower yours, or how are
Yeah.
you?
Then I would lower him out of the window and onto the ground safely.
I am thoroughly impressed. Thank you so much for sharing. Do we have one more design?
I can share mine.
Oh, sure.
Let me try to turn this on here. Video, wait. So, oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. Wait. Trying to think because I have a background. It's not. Oh, wait. No, it's not coming. There we go. You can see it a little bit. Oh, there we go. How's that? Can you see it now?
We can see a little bit. Yes, I think the background is covering most of it.
I'm going to describe it. It's so this is the basket. It's like an oval, and it has the woven, a whole lot of the woven stripes here. And then this little person here, this is Paul sticking his head about the basket. And then there's a rope on the top. There's a hole in the middle where the rope goes in. Like I didn't want to put handles on it. I wanted to put a hole in the middle. That serves as like, I feel like it's more strength to be able to lower him down and withstand his body weight. And then over the top, there's a blanket. I have the blanket like wrapped over. He has his head poking out, but and then the significance was like for the woven basket stripes, I wanted there to be a lot of those so that they couldn't see through it. Or if they happen to figure out that I was lowering him down and they were like shooting, like arrows or something at it. It wouldn't penetrate. So we needed the lines to be really close. And then I utilized the rope with the hole in the middle, like I said before, to kind of balance out his weight. If you would have put, because when you think of basket, you think of handles. If you would put handles, it may not be as supportive. So I was thinking the hole in the middle and putting the rope through that hole, that would be more supportive to be able to withstand his body weight. And then I put the blanket over the top because we needed to leave it open, right? Because he needs to breathe. So we needed a soft material to just kind of throw over the top so that they could not see looking down into it.
Great.
That's
Thank
it.
you so much. And so something simple with just giving you and this is an engineering design challenge that you just participated in. But even as we think through some of the Bible, thank you so much for sharing. Even as we think through like some of the Bible lessons or things that we share with our kids, it doesn't have to just be a handout that they might color or write on and go home. There are other ways to be able to make scripture come alive, and it could be something simple as this. Even if you think about any of the stories, we talked about Noah earlier. And so what does it mean for them to design or their own ark? What kind of specifications would it have to be? Can you make a smaller model of what a larger one might look like? And so just thinking through like how to be a little bit more creative in terms of our programming and what we offer to our scholars. And so I'm going to share just like some of like high point ideas now, just to kind of wrap up like the activity itself, but also just what I hope that you'll be able to take home. And then we can kind of open it up for conversations in terms of maybe where you are, and each of you had a reason for why you joined. And so making sure that if you have certain questions that I can respond to, that we can get to that as well. And so with this activity, what did you learn about design, balance, and maybe support? And I heard you speaking through some of those things as well. What did you learn about that?
So I will say for me, I mean, this is very similar. I know our after school team has had our students do like an egg drop challenge. And so again, instead of Paul, it's lowering, an egg in a basket. And so again, I think for me, the aha was that, thinking about scripture and are there places. And so I'd never thought about Paul from a basket, but it's the same thing. Like, can you get this egg from here, or whatever? So again, incorporating biblical examples of things that happen, but then how do we just apply the engineering design process to that biblical example. And so that was just kind of an aha for me.
I love that. And yes, it's similar to the egg drop. It's what we just did. Do we have someone else who wants to add?
I loved how we kept the materials so simple. Because when I start to think of the STEM activities with my students, I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, where am I going to get these supplies? But 2 sheets of paper, scissors, like it was so simple, but there was so much design involved in it still. It was great.
That is so important to me, is just thinking about how can you see STEM in just everyday things, your natural world, but also like how do you make things where it's accessible? And so for this particular session, I said I wanted to do something where there was not going to be any material sent out, but it's something that I know people have paper, they should have tape or maybe scissors or something laying around. Why don't we just do an activity with that? And that was the purpose of it, was trying to figure out how can I then use creativity in order to come up with an engineering design challenge that you can use what you would have in front of you, not say, okay, I can't participate because I don't have it. And so just starting to think through like, paper can go such a long way in science too, but also just getting outdoors and doing things. We're preparing for Vacation Bible School, and one of the activities is around like the heart. And so we're talking about the heart, but also understanding how does the heart function and how does it work. So they're learning how to take their pulse. They're learning like the role of exercise, and now you're able to take it again and count it like this. You just need your body and just like maybe some open space, right? And so we're finding ways to make this where it becomes more accessible, accessible for those who are teaching, but also accessible for the youth that we're serving. Thank you for sharing. All right, what about the second
I
question?
just want to.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. One thing. So I had a meeting this morning, and I was talking with someone about. So I've been encouraging my staff to use AI, like lesson plan design, whatever. But then the thing is like, don't let that make you, and I hate to say this, but like, don't let it make you stupid, right? Like, we are still the people, we are still the thinkers, we're still the editors, the designers, the creators. Like, don't just put a prompt in GPT or Claude or something and then just assume that's that. We still need to be thinking.
That is so important, because what we need to do, and that's for our students as well, the youth that we're serving, how do you leverage these as tools? And it can be a brainstorming tool. And so you have this idea and you put it in there and now do some prompt engineering to figure out like, what does it generate till it gets something that's workable and that can, that you can use. And so that is so important. It's not just taking something and just throwing it into Chat GPT, but and other AI tools, is how do you use it to brainstorm to be able to meet your needs. And the more that they use it, the more that it kind of will understand who you are and it'll learn you. And then you can, it's much easier to prompt it to do other things for you in the future.
Dr. King, Carol in the chat said the kids love a challenge. Sometimes when they have less materials, the more their creativity and ingenuity is sparked.
I love it. And that is true. You don't need a whole lot, for kids. They just want to be able to do and be engaged in it, and not necessarily where they're just hearing another thing. You're probably not going to think about Paul in this basket the same ever again. You're going to remember what you just designed and did. And so those is just creating those additional connections in the brain, for them to make, for them to think about this. And also what I'm really trying to see how we can do is just stop compartmentalizing our faith and the work that we're doing. And so if they're thinking about and doing like engineering design challenges, scientific investigations in church, they're able to, those skill sets that they're learning in school can translate well. And then similarly, when they're in these school spaces, when they're doing these things, just how you remember the egg drop challenge. I remember when we were learning about Paul. It almost gives them a way to think about it, also to witness. And so I'm just trying to figure out how do we mend that divide between what's happening with church and state and church and school, and education, so that as they're going between these different places, it doesn't seem like they have to, shut off this part of who I am to enter this space, but I can bring all of who I am and all of my experiences and the things that I'm learning in school into this space and be able to contribute. And similarly, as I'm learning in this space, I can bring all of who I am into, back into my school spaces. And so how does this relate to how Paul was saved through quick thinking and teamwork?
I think it relates easily because we were timed. We had a time limit. We had to come up with a solution within a short amount of time. And when students are doing this together, they will quickly work together in a creative way. I think that'll be really neat to see.
Thank you so much. Yeah, sometimes you have to think on things on the spot. You don't have time to 3 days to develop the best basket. You like, what do I have and how can I make it work? Right. So I really appreciate that response. And then the last question here is, what does this teach us about how God uses people and plans to protect his purpose for our lives?
Well, God could have magically transported him down that wall and not needed people and not needed a basket, not let them feel the sense of urgency and involvement, but he chose to use me.
Thank you so much, Park. And just know that He uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. You just have to be willing to allow him to add his super to your natural to be able to accomplish what we would see as miracles. And I like that comment that we shouldn't be shocked by the miracles, but I mean, every day he seems to amaze us with things that are around us, with things that are able to happen when there seems to be no way. And that's how he tends to work. I feel like that's when he works best. How the ram in the bush. I mean, I'm about to have a heart attack, and here we go. Here's a miracle, and it's like, well, thank you, but what would it have been like if the ram was just already there? I mean, I think it's just one of those things where if we can accomplish things on our own, then I guess we would have no need for God. And so he just constantly reminds us that it's important for us to lean on him. And so with that, I'm just going to share a few things around creativity. I'm going to leave you with key points, and then we can have a conversation. So as we think about 21st century learning skills, creativity is one of them. So you have critical thinking, communication, collaboration, as well as creativity. It's essential for innovation, especially in our STEM fields, for us to solve these real world problems. And it requires us to think beyond just using formulas. We have to think outside of the box. It also drives invention and discovery, from designing new technology to developing sustainable solutions. So for some children, they don't really care about learning science, but if you can tell me what I'm learning and what I can do with it, the why behind what I'm learning, then all of a sudden it becomes real to me. And then it allows them to integrate imagination with logic. It empowers students to explore what if and why not scenarios. Also, if we think about creativity in STEM, STEM isn't just technical, it's imaginative. If it was technical only, I would not be in this space. I love an opportunity to be able to then take the skills that I'm learning and figure out how can I repurpose it for a larger goal and purpose. So engineers, scientists, mathematicians, we all rely on creative thinking to develop breakthroughs. We design thinking, and engineering design processes are inherently creative. They ask learners to ideate, put together a prototype you can test, and then look, the baskets that you all made, you can always go back and revise it, right? It's an iterative process. So we have creative coding, we have robotics, maker spaces, AI even. It allows students to blend their artistic abilities with logic. And it also encourages interdisciplinary thinking, like combining math with music or even science with storytelling. If we think about creativity and faith, God is the original creator, and we are all made in his image, which includes the capacity for us to create. We have to imagine a better world. And also, creativity is key to envisioning and building communities that are more just, where there's healing and where there's hope. And I think now more than ever, we want hope. We need hope. It's a spiritual gift, and it's used for problem solving, teaching, worship, and service. And it encourages youth to see STEM as a calling and not just as a career, where creative minds can serve God's people as well as the larger planet. And then why does it matter? It prepares students for careers that don't yet exist, using tools not yet invented to solve problems we don't even know we have yet, right? And so we're in a different world where things are changing so rapidly that we don't necessarily need to prepare them for, I want to just become a doctor, I want to become a lawyer. What we need to do is instill in them these skill sets that can be transferable to any career that they choose in the future. It empowers students of faith to be solutionaries, creative agents of change, guided by purpose and compassion. And it also builds confidence and agency, because when kids are encouraged to create, they also see themselves as capable contributors to the world and not just consumers of things that have been already created. And so this is the last slide that I've prepared. And I'm just going to kind of go through it, and then I'll open it up to see, what kind of questions you might have. And what resonates most with you here. And so these are more of like best practices for planning and how we can build sustainable as well as culturally relevant STEM programs. And the first thing is that we have to start with our why. We have to root our STEM efforts within our community's values, history, as well as needs. And so a question that we can ask always is, what legacy do we want to be able to leave behind for our youth? Start with the why. The second thing is to connect STEM to faith and everyday life. So we can highlight how creativity, problem solving, and wonder reflect God's design. You can always use Bible stories as entry points for STEM exploration, like we just did. The third point is empower local leaders and youth. And so the more that we can involve youth in shaping the program, the more sustainable your program becomes. You can also invite church members, parents, and educators as guest facilitators, because while they may be a part of your congregation or maybe a part of your organization, a lot of them do have 9-to-5 jobs and they have other skills that they can contribute. So start thinking about what that might be and what it would look like. The fourth point I want to leave with you is to use accessible, low-cost materials. Start with simple tools, paper, scissors, household items, and demonstrate that STEM does not have to be high tech to have high impact. The next point is center cultural relevance. So use examples, problems, and stories from your specific context and incorporate music and food and language and local heroes within your STEM lessons and stories. The sixth thing is to build in reflection and joy. Allow children to share what they've learned and where they see God in the process. Make space for storytelling, make space for testimony, and as well as celebration. The next one is to plan for longevity. So as you document what works, then it will help you to create toolkits to use in the future, as well as to share with others. And then you can also consider partnerships and grants or local sponsorships that can help to build support. And then the last thing that we often don't think about is like use feedback forms, take photos, get testimonies to try to capture the success, because you always want to have a mechanism to measure the impact. Celebrate small wins, start where you are, and try to keep building that momentum. And so with that, I asked a question during my first point about your why. And so thinking about for your organization or for your particular program, if it can leave one lasting impact on the youth in your community, what would it be? What do you want them to remember? What do you want them to believe? Or who do you want them to become? And so you don't necessarily have to have a response to that now, but I think that that helps to ground the work that we're doing and the importance of the steps that we're taking to be more forerunners as it relates to connecting STEM and faith. So that's what I have. What questions can I answer?
You can put them in the chat or you can unmute yourself. Feel free.
I just thank you so much. And I think just being able to think about, I think sometimes we're very discreet in our thinking, like, okay, here's the Bible lesson, but now we're going to do the STEM exploration or whatever. But thinking about ways to integrate, I think, I mean, it strengthens faith. And for the children that we're working with, like, wow, God was the inventor of physics and chemistry and biology. And again, thinking about ways to make that real for them, as opposed to, again, here we're reading this Bible story and maybe we'll do some art, but we never make that connection between, STEM and Bible. So I appreciate this. It's just very enlightening. And especially as we're moving into Vacation Bible School and then also a 7-week summer camp to make sure that we're, thinking along these lines.
Thank you so much. Any other questions before I turn it over to Aisha to close us out?
I just wanted to ditto everything that Cynthia said. Like, I never really, like, Rooseway Inc. is a faith-based organization, but we're so used to focusing on hiding aspects of God because we're going into schools and so forth, and we kind of get brainwashed in that frame of mind. So this really opened up a whole new redirection of my thinking in order to plan to be able to integrate, you know, the STEM and bring it back to, you know, things like God was the ultimate creator. Like 20 years in, this never dawned on me. So thank you very, very much for this. It was very enlightening.
Dr. King, Park, and Sarah thanked you as well in the chat. I just want to leave the floor open to anyone who might, before I wrap up, who might have a question or a comment. I don't want to wrap it up too soon.
Another part I love about STEM is it really gives children the opportunity to see what their talents are that God has given them, whether it's the planning aspect, the building aspect, the adding pretty touches to whatever they're building. Like it really gives them each that opportunity to see that God gave them that gift and they can share it. So I love that also about STEM.
And we're all members of the same body, but we don't all have to be good at the same things. And so that's why it's important to collaborate with others. I appreciate you for that point.
Dr. King, I enjoyed whenever you spoke about expecting and looking for and planning for joy and reflection. Because if you plan for joy, that means, you know, you're constantly looking for it and it centers you in a whole different way. So I really appreciated that point. And if that's all, and it's okay with everyone, I'll wrap it up. Is that okay? Okay. That concludes our session for today. We hope you enjoyed the session. I'd like to thank Dr. King for taking the time to share this information with us. Please take a moment to fill out the evaluation survey that's been posted in the chat. And this concludes Faith, Creativity, and STEM, Igniting the Spark. Part 2 of this webinar series entitled Let Your Light Shine, STEM is Ministry will take place on June 2nd with Dr. King. Thank you so much for coming today, and I hope you enjoyed yourself.
I look forward to seeing you all at part 2.